Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. It's so good to be back. I have missed 2 weeks in a row because last week I celebrated my youngest one's 11th birthday and I wanted to be fully present with him in that moment. So thank you for your wishes and everyone that reached out. I appreciate it. And then we're so sorry that my co-host is not here this week. So we almost tag teaming every week that something has happened, but we are very excited to have Jillian. Now, I may say your surname correct, Pawlowski, or did I say it correctly?
Yes, Pulowski. Hi.
Yeah. And where does it originate from? Tell me.
It's Polish. My husband is Polish.
Oh, it's Polish. Okay. And what is your, uh, you're not Polish, right? Originally from Poland. Where are you
No,
originally from?
I am from America. My ancestry is German and English.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so before we went live, we did say that there is a little bit of a delay in the video. So just bear with me if I'm pausing a little bit, because I think maybe Jillian might still be talking in between. And as always, please don't hesitate to interact and engage. I am really looking forward to this topic today, which is really from micro hero moments and how small moments, or small wins rather, create epic life change. I'm going to be reading a little bit about Julian's bio. She's a trauma informed certified coach who blends metacognition. Oh, I am so in for a treat here. Mind body connection and radical self love to encourage lasting change that honors the whole person. Then she also empowers educators to reclaim their identity, regulate their nervous systems, and lead from within because when educators thrive, students do too. You see, I told you it's like I'm going to get something out of this because I am also a facilitator of skills development to students. So I can't wait to learn more about that. Her passion for growth fuels her calling to make the world a kinder, more loving place by starting with the adults who shaped the generation. So, without further ado, Gillian, it's over to you. But before I do that, welcome to everyone that's here on Instagram as well as watching on YouTube. Again, we will endeavor to read your comments, but I am here alone today. So, if we don't read it, we'll just put it up screen. And if there's any questions for Gillian, don't hesitate to ask. So, over to you, Jillian. Where did all this start and why did this journey unveil itself for you?
Mm. First of all, thank you for that warm introduction. I'm really excited to be here. Hello to everyone joining us live. And before we went live, Anissa and I were talking in the green room, so to speak, before we went live, and we have so much overlapping that I really can't wait for this conversation. And what we were talking about kind of before we hit the live button was how even just one person showing up, or when we have these heart to heart conversations, these vulnerable, courageous, authentic, true conversations, these even can change our lives and our perspectives. And as you were reading my own bio back to me and in the audience, I was hit with a new, fresh insight about you read the last line, and my purpose is to make the world a kinder, more loving place. And the topic I'm excited to talk about is how micro wins can dramatically and significantly change one's life. And as you read that to me, my calling is simply to make the world a kinder, more loving place. And that happens through micro moments, micro actions. Maybe it's the smile I share with you, Anissa, and anyone who's joining us live. Maybe it's the warmth and love that you just provided me as you introduced me. I don't need some large, grandiose purpose or calling, but simply to be kind in all of the small moments, to be loving to myself and others in all of the small moments. So, I say that to say I'm already getting a lot out of this conversation, and I hope that the listeners and yourself do too. And I'm so excited to be here. And you asked, where did this all start? And I love the theme and focus of your show here about the hero's journey and grit and grace and overcoming and victories. It resonates with me so much. I love adventure. And like any great quest, it always has, these monsters or mountains or things to overcome. And so mine did too. And I know, like, drop in the chat if that resonates with you, if you've had to overcome hardship in your life. And so my story really struck right when I became a teenager, I suppose. And that's when this onset of big real emotion starts to happen. And immediately I suffered for like over a decade with depression and anxiety and this sensation that I was lost and purposeless and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was unsure. Excuse me. And I did not believe that you could or should follow your dreams. That felt to me like a fairy tale that only special people get to follow and pursue what lights them up. I didn't know that it was for people, anyone, or people like me or from my neighborhood. I felt very unspecial and disenchanted by myself and by life. So a symptom of that, or to deal with that heaviness and that cynicism and hopelessness, I drank alcohol and abused alcohol for a decade. And so part of my story is a decade of alcohol abuse, and I lived recklessly, and it was very painful and dangerous, frankly. And that continued until I hit this rock bottom where I kind of woke up to myself and realized I had lost my friendships and the most important relationships to me and the jobs I cared about, and I was breaking bones, and I didn't really want to live anymore. Well, I did want to live, but I knew that those two things could not coincide. I could not continue to live that way. It wasn't really possible to live both. So I hit a rock bottom eventually when in my mid to late 20s. And that's where I began a path of healing and a path of growing. And before I, take a pause from this harrowing tale, because please let me share with you that it does get better and there is hope and there is a way out. So whether you struggle with mental health issues or big emotions or hopelessness or a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, like, there is hope and there is a way out. It doesn't end there. And that's the rock bottom is unfortunately and fortunately what it took for me to then change the direction of my course. And until that point, when I turned, like I said in the beginning, I turned about 13 and had all these big emotions and I didn't know how to deal with them. So I drank to celebrate. I was raised in an alcoholic household. We drank when we celebrated. We drank when we were stressed. We drank when we were bored. We drank when we were busy. And so there was this evil combination of big feelings and then not dealing with them or developing a way to deal with them. And that was sort of a comorbid for when I hit that rock bottom, and about a decade or more so later, when it could not carry on that way. So that's what started me on this journey, was the enough is enough and the deep pain and needing to change in a major way.
Jillian, so firstly, thank you for your vulnerability. It takes courage to say publicly that I am a recovering alcoholic, or I binged, or this was my vice, and I can certainly relate to being raised, not necessarily by my mom, but knowing that she too was an alcoholic. And it's not easy because you're dealing with trauma, deep-rooted trauma and wounds. And so it's the one extreme or the other, as you rightfully say. You'll celebrate with alcohol, and when you're in pain and suffering, alcohol is the one vice that you go to. And I vowed, I mean, firstly, part of my faith is not to drink alcohol, but when people are in pain or wounds, your faith doesn't play a role in that moment because you're in suffering, you are in darkness. And fortunately for some people, the darkness are the catalyst to come back into light and becomes the very thing on what it is that you are now serving with. Because when I read your bio, you are a trauma-informed certified coach. So the very hero's journey quest that you needed to embark on was to slay those monsters and those demons and dragons and villains in order to, but not necessarily the external ones, right? Because often we think it's only the external ones. But when we reflect and pause and we come back to center, some of these are very much projections. I see one of my amazing guest is saying, Jillian, me too, watching with students. He's also watching with students. Leslie Flowers. Leslie is a very near and dear LinkedIn connection who's been on this segment and brought a lot of value to the segment. So good to see you here, Leslie. And I just want to greet and acknowledge everyone that's here on Instagram, Mishi, Marvi, and yes, I can't see that from this distance. This is when you're getting older and you can't see everything, even if you're wearing specs. But be that as it may, I have fun with the fact that I am getting older, and there's all these niggles that are showing up. But Jillian, just to come back to it. So these experiences in the beginning, it's difficult to accept that quest that you alluded to earlier on. And it's very difficult to say, I am not the victim, because in those moments, we feel a victim of, or that this is happening to me. So, what was the one life-defining moment or experience where you said, no more, I'm done?
The turning point was when I reached out. I was experiencing the sensation of, I cannot live this way anymore. And I simply text a girlfriend of mine and was honest with her with exactly what I was feeling and what I thought the problem was and how I, at that moment, did not see a way out. I just was honest and I reached out. And that just one moment changed everything, because she, picked me up and took me to a meeting where I began a 12-step program of recovery. And this is where so much healing, learning, and growing happened. And I began to climb out. But I think it's important to say, I did not climb out alone. And that community provided the accountability, it provided the strength, it provided the support, and the shared humanity and commonality in, surely it is, can be challenging and daunting to be honest and accepting and vulnerable with your experience or your pain or your troubles, and getting through that, or getting over your own ego enough to be honest about what you're experiencing. Right on the other side is commonality and a million people who are experiencing the same thing as you. You are not alone. I know when we are isolated, we can perceive that we're the only ones experiencing what we're experiencing, but it reminds me of like drowning in a shallow end of a pool or a beach. Like, just stand up, because you're not. You're not alone. And there are millions of people experiencing something similar to what you are going through. You're not the first person in history to experience it, and you won't be the last. And so I think that turning point for me was reaching out and being honest is what began the influx of resources that are available to us, to me, to everybody.
Gillian, so I'm hearing you say something quite profound, is that when you released the shame and the judgment within yourself, it was, and you felt safe to say, well, hold on, I am struggling, I'm drowning, I am in the abyss of it all, and that I need help. But that inner critic, that judge, jury, and executioner, as I always say on this segment, is what holds us back. So we stay deep in the depths of our pain and our shame and our suffering, and that, you know, that almost disgust that we're sitting with and the embarrassment behind it, that we don't reach out. So we isolate to the point of where we really believe that there is no help. And I loved what you said earlier on, the accountability, because all we need in that moment is the sacred holding of a mirror back to us to say, you are worthy, you are deserving, you are loved, you are beautiful, you are more than what you believe you currently are based on where you find yourself. So with that in mind, how did you, given the topic that we are talking about, how did you learn to discover these micro hero moments? Because I think when people hear the word hero, heroine, shiro, they're expecting dramatic shifts and changes and big, bold, courageous moves. But please unpack this for us, what it could actually translate into in a more simpler way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing the conversation here. I'm it's easy to, and even for your listeners, you know, or for anyone who does not have this same struggle or this same chapter in their story, to say, oh, that's not for me. But hold on a moment, because it doesn't have to be this huge big T trauma, external rock bottom moment. Even if you don't share that story or have that in your life, the solution to it all was really in the baby steps that I took, right? So when you asked me what was the turning point, I reached out to a girlfriend. I sent her a text message. That's a small thing, but it led to this dramatic change in my life. One thing then led to the next. And you could even zoom in way onto the micro moment of your morning and the choice you make and the interactions that you have. In the title of this, you know, grit and grace and gratitude, if you were to include more of those, the grit was only developed because I kept showing up one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. That's all. And that's so much more accessible than thinking about all of the more macro parts of my life that desperately needed changed. I would have been overwhelmed and driven to give up or call it quits. But because I started this journey or adventure just focusing on the present moment at hand, showing up and making the coffee, or, you know what, let me just break my goals, like, right, like getting another job or rebuilding my friendships, all of those I was able to break down into small. What's the smallest thing I can do in the direction of that? And let's connect it to grace and gratitude too, because I'm going to celebrate so hard after each baby step and acknowledge that I am making progress, right? And focusing on how much possibility and success is already here. It's already here in these small wins. And the more that you continue to show up in small win, what's another small win, another baby step I can take, another micro win and micro choice and micro moment that's available to me right here and now. You over time develop grit. You over time develop self efficacy and self trust. And those things alone make a really strong hero who has what it takes to get to the end of the hero's journey. And you don't have to slay a giant dragon. Maybe you just need to brush your teeth and then celebrate that. And that will pick up your, emotional frequency, and that can carry you. And that's the grace, right? Because it's not all going to be easy. I have a lovely way of getting really sparkly and rainbowy about these micro wins. And yes, we need to celebrate them. We deserve to celebrate ourselves far more than we are, and give ourselves far more credit than we've been led to believe we're worthy of. Let's party more. Let's celebrate more. Let's boost our own morale and be our own champion, because we deserve it. And it makes the medicine go down easier. And that's what can carry us through. And then over time, you get to look back and say, I'm really grateful I showed up. I'm really grateful I got dressed. I'm really grateful I'm breathing air. I'm really grateful I applied for the job. I'm really grateful how I handled that interaction. I'm really proud of myself. And if nothing else, like, what else is the point than feeling like you're doing enough, you are enough, and you're making an impact just by being you in the small moments every day. That's what it's all for. I think my favorite quote is maybe by Jim Carrey, where he says, I wish everyone would get rich and famous just to realize that that's not the point. I'm paraphrasing. That might not be his exact quote, but I love the message that it's so much less about these grandiose, major meta things, but rather how you are feeling and experiencing and meeting yourself and others right now, in this moment, in this next step. Make it less daunting. Take it easy.
Jillian, I'm going to respond to what you said right now. I loved so much of the golden nuggets. There's lots I want to pick up on. I just want to read Marvy's comment on Instagram. He says, I struggle day to day with alcohol. It helps me escape from reality. I lost my mom. My wife does not compare. My mom was the go-to woman. What is a man's place in the strong, dominant woman's world? We will come back to that shortly in a moment, because I think it's pertinent to unpack that. It's quite a vulnerable question, and we thank you for it, that you are bringing it to this conversation. But I do want to highlight something just to continue on this micro hero moments, because it's not about the celebration, and the milestone is not about toxic positivity or toxic resilient moments. It is when you're in the depths of the darkness, and you said, Jillian, I got up today and I did one thing. I got out of bed today. That is something to celebrate. I mean, I used to be, I'm always this, the glass is full, the glass is always half full, it's never empty type of person, and silver lining. And, when we're always the one that looks like we've got it all together, and there's nothing's wrong, and we'll find a solution, we're not going to be a victim of our circumstances. That in and of itself is also, Jillian, I need you to come in here to say it's sometimes a trauma response, because we never felt held or part of that safety, that psychological and safety that we may not have received in our former years. So our default state is, I've got this, I'm going to control this, I'm going to find the solution. But the small micro moments could be as simple as, I allowed myself to feel the ugly feelings in this moment.
Yes.
Because I never do. I suppress them. I allowed myself to realize that I have an inner villain side too, but I'm not going to shame that part of me. That part of me was holding me or keeping me safe in those moments, but now I know more. So how do we get people to start, before we respond to the question, how do we get people to start accepting all parts of themselves, and even whilst they may feel like the villain in the moment, that when they recognize that in and of itself could be something to celebrate.
Beautifully said, Anissa. And I think that's the first step, is the noticing and the observation and developing that skill of becoming aware of when the villain or the saboteur is present. Just noticing and developing that awareness muscle is something to celebrate. And then as you practice noticing and then celebrate when you notice, it brings non-judgment to this party of whether you're healing or growing or learning or changing. Non-judgment is essential. So bringing curiosity to say, oh, isn't that interesting? I notice that I have a really reactive emotion right now, or that I feel like suppressing this, or I'm judging myself around that. Isn't that interesting? Let me get curious about who's here. What version of myself needs to be held and witnessed and expressed or loved right now? Not shamed, not fixed, not even changed, but the relaxation. And so I think noticing is a great place to start, and combining that with non-judgment. And then I will also add to it willingness. Maybe just making a declaration with and to yourself. If you place your hand on your heart, or maybe you write in a journal, and just becoming willing to notice. Because when we practiced judging ourselves or suppressing ourselves for so long, that becomes our norm and that becomes familiar. And so to even consider starting to notice our inner saboteur, the inner villain, or the unpleasant or painful even emotions can be frightening. And so just regulating your beautiful nervous system and having that moment with yourself, and acknowledging, I'm finally ready to just become willing, and allowing that micro moment of inviting your own willingness to observe without judgment creates space for healing, creates opportunity for expression, and creates a moment for possible witnessing, just by you becoming willing to meet yourself with curiosity instead of shame. It doesn't have to be huge, just a moment, you with your inner villain, you with your beautiful inner saboteur. It's all part of you, and it's all welcome, and it's all human. And starting to become willing to observe yourself curiously creates the space and creates the next step. Don't get overwhelmed with the rest of the healing journey. Just start somewhere. It's powerful.
Very powerful. And before we close off on this point and answer the question, I do feel like I always say to others that I walk alongside in the journey, in walking themselves home to themselves, is actually see yourself as the 5-year-old version. And how would you treat her or him? And in the same way, when you are engaging with someone, see that version, because we all have a light and dark side. And so celebrating even that you were able to observe somebody else in that moment in the villain side, but is really just in a space of survival, and that they need to be held in that sacred space, and that we that are more self-aware needs to be not moving with judgment, and rather with radical empathy. So I'm going to leave that there and let you respond to the question again. So I'm going to read it out. And he asked, what is a man's place in the strong, dominant woman's world? Would you like to respond to that, Gillian?
Of course. And just thank you so much for commenting and sharing everything that you did. Kudos to you for reaching out. Let's go ahead and start with the celebration of the willingness and the curiosity and the non-judgment. Thank you for using your voice. And what is the man's role in the strong, dominant woman's world or space? I will steer away from like the man and the woman's role, and I would rather just ask you, who are you authentically? And what is your role? Might be a different question to ask. That they're less stereotyping and more authenticity and expression and nuance here. You being your most loving self with and for yourself, and the role you play in caring for yourself demonstrates and leads the way and makes you more capable to care for and serve others, whether it be a strong, independent woman in your life or anybody. So walking the walk, caring for yourself, supporting yourself so that you can show up as that best version of yourself for everyone in your life, I would say is your role and is your responsibility.
Very well put. I mean, I think this battle of the sexes, if I can put it that way, it requires us to come to understanding. And it also comes to equality and civility and seeing one another as equal rather than or I always say to people, I'm never above anyone, I'm neither below you, but we walk alongside on this earthly realm as spiritual beings, only just having a human experience, right? So in saying that, I loved what you also shared, that you want to take us on a journey with today. And we spoke about, we've touched on how to explore life's monsters, shadows, and mountains that don't block the journey, they illuminate it, and how the difficult moments make the bright ones brighter. And the real hero's work happens in the quiet, unglamorous decisions we make moment by moment. Do you want to share maybe something closer to your own personal narrative? How did that unfold for you? So that I always feel that if we share our own stories, it almost gives the permission and invitation to others to feel that it's okay. I'm not alone. And there are others that have walked this journey, speaking victoriously today about it, and that I'm not the victim, that I can eventually become victorious because of the dark, unglamorous, quiet, difficult moments. So please share with us, Gillian.
Yes, I get excited about going back to the basics. And I'm well aware that it's the eye roll, unsexy. I'm sick of hearing this. I already know this. Basics, the unglamorous part of a hero's journey is in the small moments where we choose the true self-care, meaning, instead of prioritizing or putting a bubble bath on your calendar, you're making sure that you eat breakfast, right? Or that you go on the walk instead of just purely commiserating about it, right? And so for me, in my own personal journey, it started with, honestly, recovering in community, right? So showing up and being honest and receiving the emotional, spiritual support that was needed in the moment. It was not glamorous. It was extremely humbling to be honest and take an emotional inventory about my stressors and my harms to others and where I need to make amends in my own life. Very unsexy, very unglamorizing, and it's work. But what lives on the other side is the greatest reward of emotional freedom, relief, healing, hope, a returning to your heart and your wholeness. And then I paired that, and the next step was then revealed, which was exercise. I know it's not a mind-blowing concept, but taking care of my body and connecting my mind and my body, my brain and my nervous system, the hormone flushing that happens, the peace that happens when we actually just care for our physical vessel and prioritize our mind and body connection. I mean, you might not need to take notes on that. You might already know, but when we're not practicing and applying and prioritizing what we know, then do we really know it? So that was another large part of my journey. But it, those 1%, those micro moments of I'm going to do yoga a couple times a week, or actually I became trained as a yoga teacher, but those micro moments, I don't know where I would be without them. I'll just start by saying that they dramatically altered the whole course of my life, simply because I did the simple basic steps of, regulating my nervous system and seeking accountability and emotional support, seeking community, and prioritizing my mind and body connection. Because like you said, Anissa, we're spiritual and energetic beings living in this human body. They're both connected. It's all one system, and these branches work together. And so starting with those micro steps, just take a walk or consider, become willing, right, to prioritize the unglamorous parts of caring for yourself that lead you and prepare you to then you can start to care from others and pour from a cup that is full.
Wow. Again, I mean, one always thinks I need to exercise 5 days a week. But as you're saying, it's let me have one less or one better meal today. Let me do 2 minutes of breath work. Let me do 2 minutes of meditation. Let me ask myself one journal thing or write one line in the journal.
Yes.
And I like that you say we need to be in community, because there's a sacredness within that community that also holds us accountable, but in a way that is gentle, in a way that is going to remind us about our potentiality, our deservingness, our worthiness. But it takes the judgment. I do want to come back again to the judgment lens, because I think it's the judgment that if I'm not doing it's perfect enough,
Yes.
or longer or long enough, or more than what my particular standard dictates it should be,
Yes.
or what societal norms says it should become, then I ain't going to do it at all.
Right.
And then I go back into the shaming and guilting and feeling less than and like a failure. So what I want to ask you is, what are the techniques that you use when you do go into that self-sabotage mode, which is our default mode? But how you spoke earlier on, and I've done the work with positive intelligence around curiosity and being innovative and generative in that curiosity moment. But what are some of the techniques that you use to bring yourself back when you find that you are about to sabotage in the moment?
This is where the rubber meets the road, because just like you said, I think a lot of resistance starts to occur, and that's why people skip the self-care, because they expect themselves to do it. If I'm not doing it to the fullest, the way it's painted in society, then it's not worth it. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. The micro changes, just committing to the 2-minute walk. But so that's what I'll say is, and that's the work that we do in Empowered Educator for the educators that we serve, who are, very busy throughout their day serving students. And what can you do that is accessible, that is a micro step, and to witness it have huge impacts is, for example, I always bring it back to the mind and body connection. So I would say any nervous system regulating technique will support you because when you're, Anissa, you mentioned that the sort of autopilot programming that the masses, ourselves included as human beings, function on is that inner saboteur. The brain is wired to find the loss and the threat and the what's wrong and but the more we can pause that and regulate our nervous systems, whether it's a box breathing exercise, there's oodles of breathing techniques that you could try and practice to pause, connect with your mind and body, and regulate your nervous system through something as simple as a breathing exercise, whether it's box breath. Will allow your prefrontal cortex, that frontal lobe of your brain that does creativity, connection, higher level thinking, that will put you back in your seat of agency and choice. So then you can interrupt that autopilot inner saboteur, autopilot critical thinking, autopilot hustle, go, go, go. It's never enough. I have to keep going. I have to push through. Remember that you're not being chased by a bear and you actually have the agency to pause, breathe, connect your mind and body once again, return to that rest and digest state. Take a break, breathe. And then from that moment, you have so much more cognitive bandwidth, agency, possibilities, and potentials to choose from. Or it could be placing your hand on your heart or tapping. I mean, and listen, that's something that we provide and are chatting about right now in Empowered Educator, is this concept of break time. Providing educators, which is, teachers, parents, paraprofessionals, admin, anybody who works in a school system or with students is an educator, has a role in the future generations' formation. And the best way we can support them is by supporting ourselves and showing up with that cognitive bandwidth, that connection. So how do we get it? And we're sharing tiny tips, tiny, accessible, the unsexy breaks, but that we all need and deserve to take, so that way we can show up to each moment as consciously, creatively, and connectedly as possible, so that way we're able to truly respond and meet the moment. Did I answer the question well?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. And I almost want to build on that a little bit more. Excuse me, as I was not going down and getting off the screen, battery was about to die. So it's like, plug in quickly. This conversation can't end abruptly. Forgive me when you saw me bending down. Okay. So what I want to ask you, because you and I, and I'm never going to claim to be enlightened and better than and ahead of. We're all on a conscious journey, and ultimately we're all at different stages within that consciousness journey. But when you highlighted, nobody's chasing you. There's no saber-toothed tiger chasing you, but the brain is hardwired to believe that and to react. And I say react with emphasis because you're in survival. The left region of our brain is the survival region, right? It's the fight, flight, freeze, fright, faint state. I call it the Fs, the flippin' Fs, but not that F, but it does get to that. So for those that have not been able to move into the right side or the right region of the brain, where you are using the executive functions like the prefrontal cortex, and they are in survival, or they have almost crippling conflict, because everyone that I meet is either in the judgment, survival, or state of crippling conflict. How do we shift when you don't know what you don't know? And as you rightfully say, as educators or even students, And us sitting here today, what we don't know, we don't know, and that is unconscious incompetence and it's bliss. But the moment we get to the conscious incompetent state, it's not comfortable. We know that we don't know, or we know that we're in survival. How do we not give away our sovereignty in those moments? And how do we have a reclamation of that sovereignty when we're actually in survival, judgment, projection, and conflict, whether it's with ourselves and others? And I can bet for those that are listening, if you're in conflict and judgment with yourself, the whole world, you are going to be in conflict and judgment and really in that dis-ease state. So, Jillian, I know it's a big ask, but how do we give people permission, so to speak, to move?
The thing is, Anissa and listeners, take a deep breath with me. I say this with the most love and service in my heart is that, Anissa, you and I cannot be giving anyone permission. They must give it to themselves. You are the hero that you've been waiting for. I'm telling you, this is the most loving thing that I could say right now is that I start these beautiful identity evolution journeys with educators, with two companions for the journey. One of those companions is complete personal responsibility. I know we don't want to hear that we need to be more responsible, but the person that you must be responsible for is you. I know you've got the kids and the family to take care of, and if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you even expect yourself to do it? I say that with love. So taking ownership of your experience is the first part. And then the second part is becoming willing, and like part of responsibility is making the commitment to yourself that you are worthy of this responsibility, that you are the hero that you've been waiting for and you're ready, and kind of letting that medicine go down smoothly with the nervous system regulation. How do you become more aware? A really practical way to practice increasing your awareness is, setting an alarm on your phone that will go off maybe 4 times throughout the day. If you're really feeling frisky, you can set it to go off at the top of every hour. And if you're rolling your eyes, I was right there with you at the beginning of my own journey. For our educators who are in school, I say, then set 4 times of the day where you are committed to regulating your nervous system, right? And checking in with your mind and body connection, and you're remembering that you're not being actually chased by a bear and that you are the sovereign being with the power and the agency. So creating check-in blocks for yourself throughout a day and then really actually committing to them. Do it for fun. Make it a practice, just something you do today. Okay? Or maybe it's something you do this week. Start so small, practice, have fun, but setting those alarms throughout the day will help bring your attention and your consciousness back, because we can wake up and do our morning meditation. And before we go to bed, we can do our gratitude list, but it's who we're being throughout the day that really makes the bulk of who we're being in our life and the impact that we're having or how we're experiencing life. So how do you not check out? Start by setting these alarms maybe on your phone or check-in points, right? So before you walk into the building for work, on your lunch break, before you get into your car, and then before you walk in the door when you go back home, right? Some examples of checkpoints where you put a sticky note on the lunchbox that says, time to check in, or whatever it says, to practice having that moment to slow down and connect with your mind and body and regulate your nervous system, so that way you can strengthen the muscle of noticing and awareness, and strengthen the muscle of remembering the truth of your power, remembering the truth of your agency, your worthiness, your capability, and practicing that, right? Grace is in the title. Give yourself grace. Allow this skill, like any skill, to be developed over time. But the way it's going to develop is with consistency and commitment. So then it kind of goes back to that complete personal responsibility. You are the hero you've been waiting for, and you are worth the effort it takes. Small effort, tiny moments lead to a huge, dramatic, radical life change. And you're so worth every moment. And give yourself grace when you miss the alarm or whatever it is.
Oh, Jillian, I can't believe we're on the top of the hour. We have 9 minutes remaining. And instead of me asking you a question, I'm going to divert it back to, is there anything that you feel you'd like to share that is a burning thing that is important for you to get off? Or is there anything in your teachings or in your own journey that you'd like to unpack?
What's coming through for me is how human it is to see this challenge, this adventure, this opportunity, this life ahead, the moment you have, the day you have ahead of you. And the mind can make it so inordinately complicated and complex and get overwhelmed and want to quit. And smiling is actually a nervous system regulator too. So if you just allow a smile to come to your face and allow it to be simple, allow it to be easy, and just taking the next small step, give yourself a small break today to check in. And then truly recognizing from that place how far you have already come. You have already survived all of your hardest days, and giving yourself the love and credit for that, and letting that be enough. And then that enoughness is the energy from which you can just simply take the next step, reach out, ask for the support that you desire, share your vulnerability with a friend or with any support system that resonates with you. That next small micro choice could be the one that unlocks this giant trajectory and relief or support for you, and that you're so, so, so deserving of it.
It's beautiful. I like that you also constantly use the word agency. And it's so, so utterly underrated, because the agency, as you say, nobody needs permission.
Yes.
You almost have to drive that self-efficacy, the agency for yourself, because we all speak about wanting autonomy, yet when we are given autonomy, we don't necessarily use it to the best of our ability. And autonomy doesn't mean power and overuse of power, but it does certainly mean that if you speak about responsibility, and I know when that word is broken down, it can be response. So you choose your response because you have the ability. So in all fairness, agency is a superpower, along with, I feel, authenticity is a superpower. And everything that we've spoken about here today is saying, step into, I like to bring these acronyms forward. But the AA in Alcoholic Anonymous seemed that we started off talking about, you going into this 12-step program, but I would reframe AA to be stepping into authenticity and agency.
Woo! Love that.
So how do we hold ourselves? And if we want to get even more, the triple A factor, and not even the triple X factor, is accountability,
Yes.
So authenticity, accountability, and agency. That is what I got out of today, out of this conversation. And I'm really grateful for that, because when we're not in our truth, we are going to show up as the villain in the not so positive context, because it's okay to be the villain at times, because it just allows you to step into truth and own your space and reclaim your sovereignty and establish boundaries. Yes, there's a negative side to the villain too, and we just need to hold ourselves accountable when that version shows up. So I'm going to give you the floor in the last few minutes that we have, in this 5 minutes. Is there anything that you'd had to be reminded of holding yourself accountable? Because it's great having an accountability partner, and it's great being reminded to stay authentic. But what were moments for you that you realized that there's no stepping away from that, and that you weren't in your truth if you were responding any other way?
That is a big question to end it with. Thank you for it. I mean, the journey to authenticity could be a whole nother conversation, which I love. And I think it harkens back to the bravery, the regulation, the agency, the sovereignty gets developed over time. I also think authenticity is something that you can step into and develop. All of these things are skills that can be developed over time. And so for myself, I choose to be really gracious. We've had a lot of grit, right? And pull yourself up by your bootstraps in this call. Like, take responsibility for yourself. You have agency, you have sovereignty. And it would be remiss if I didn't say, and in the same sentence or in the same conversation, I need to acknowledge the amount of grace I have given myself in those moments where I'm holding myself accountable and noticing areas I want to shift, step up, change, witness, express, fusing each of those moments with grace. And it's if it weren't for the communities and the accountability I seek and have with others, sometimes I wouldn't have the fodder and the wisdom and the quips to give myself. I was lost on my own for decades. I don't have to do that anymore. But now I am supported, even in moments where I choose to hold myself accountable. I have the strength that's been provided for me by all of my teachers and coaches and friends and family and moments along the way that have treated me with grace. And now I remember it kind of gives me the language to be gracious with myself. And if it wasn't for that sense of support and community, self-accountability would be a lot harder. Yes, no one can come do it for you. You are the hero you've been waiting for. And community makes it easier for those moments where you do need to hold yourself accountable. You can kind of borrow the love that others have given you until and as you develop it for yourself.
Well stated, well stated. So I'm going to ask one final, and I promise it's going to be a smaller type of question. So in the hero or shero's journey, we never know until we've been in the abyss, and now we gain insight and wisdom, and we come back with this magic elixir that we take back into the ordinary world, and we do it all over again as the hero's journey, takes us. Now, what was the magic elixir for you that you brought back? And because we're on multiple hero or shero's journeys, there's never just one magic elixir. But what were some of those magic elixirs for you?
Mm-hmm. Some of those magic elixirs for me include and are not limited to community, reaching out, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and connect. Some sort of mind-body connection. Please involve your body, including your emotions, your belief, your physical well-being, your health, to be a part of your healing journey. Don't let it all live up in your brain. And allowing yourself to celebrate how far you have already come. And every tiny win, you know, if you're listening, and maybe I will do this as well once we get off this call, but write a list of 10 wins you've already had today, whether it's evening wherever you're listening or whether it's morning where you're listening. I know you've already had 10 wins. Do you know you've already had 10 wins? Go list them. And just to start to collect more evidence that will give you fuel for if you're ending your Friday night or you're beginning it, your Friday, collecting and celebrating and appreciating all of the micro wins, the small wins, or the big ones. Learning how to celebrate yourself can really develop this sense of self-love, which enables the rest of the journey, like authenticity and expression and sovereignty.
We will do another segment in the not so distant future, and I think I would love to take you up on that call to action, that authenticity, and the conversation around that needs to be a full-on conversation, because most of us, whether we no longer in COVID, still wear the mask. So how do we unveil what's behind the mask?
Yeah.
I almost think that the topic can be the unveiling of the mask and the path to authenticity. So I encourage you to go back onto the Calendly link and see when we can have a repeat. If you so choose to come back and delight us with your beautiful energy, your wisdom, your authenticity, and I think your ability to hold us accountable, to celebrate ourselves, and even just take that one micro moment. So I thank you for being here, Gillian. And for those that have joined us on Instagram, appreciate you stayed with us for the entire hour. Gillian, you can stay with me on the live. I normally do a short debrief. And again, for those that haven't watched the entire segment, I encourage you to come back and watch the replay and let us know in the chat exactly what was the golden nugget that you take away from today. And Gillian, on that note, where do people find you? Would you like them to connect with you? Where would that be? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? Maybe you just want to share it verbally, and we can always go back onto the same event post, and you can go and post the links there afterwards. Where do they find you?
Yes, thank you for the conversation, Anissa. I'm really excited about our next conversation about authenticity. That got me fired up. And yeah, I would love for people to reach out. If this resonated with you, please come say hi. You can find me on Instagram, Jillian Pulowski. And actually, Wednesday, February 11th, in Empowered Educator, we are going to deep dive this conversation about taking the little breaks for self-care. We're going to deep dive that accountability and what that could look like for you. So if you want to work together more, this event is free. It's on February 11th at empowerededucator.com/conversations. You can find me on Instagram at Jillian Pulowski or email me at jillian@empowerededucator.com.
Love it. So on that note, thank you for being here. Stay with me, Gillian. We will see you again next week. And we certainly miss Jamila. I know she would have brought some additional value to this conversation, but we'll see you same time next week. And then God bless you wherever you are in the world, and celebrate yourself is what we're going to leave you with.
Yay!
Bye for now. See you next week.